So today we're taking a look at the Rapido Gunderson 53-foot Husky stack well car, which is owned by Canadian Pacific, and it comes with 2 randomized containers, which we'll see later in the video. And this is made of metal, so it's actually quite heavy. But anyways, let's get started here in the front. Alright, so in the front we have some stanchions with some white painted grab irons on the sides, more grab irons in the front, and this metal knuckle coupler, which is quite shiny. Though I later found out it's actually missing a spring, which is fine on the other side. Luckily though, I do have some spares. Then to the side we have this coupler cut lever. Then next up we have some walkway platforms on the top, which are made of see-through etched metal, so you can easily see the truck underneath. And it is interesting, the edges of it are thicker, so it is like a composite of 2 different parts. And then in between we have this air reservoir tank, which is a pretty simple design, just 2 pipes. Then to the side we have lots of detail here, like this molded box, the stripe on the side, lots of car information, and underneath we have the truck, which does have some molded in text like TTX and some kind of serial number, and they are not rotating bearing caps. There also are some numbers on the sides to mark the container sizes. Then on the end we have this lifting point and an ICB storage box, which ICB stands for interbox connectors for the containers, although this label is a bit messed up, which is clear on the other side. Then next up we have some platforms on the sides along with these pockets and this hook device on the very edge, and here you can see inside the ladder structure for the floor, nicely molded in, although the edges are a bit rough, maybe they used too much paint. And here's how it looks like across the side, which the middle has this bevel, says CP because it's Canadian Pacific, and there's some more labels here, like removing all debris from the well floor before loading containers. Then further down the car we have some more printing, and this car is actually made in Nova Scotia by Trenton Works on the east coast of Canada, where they also have patents for it. And they also have the silver AI tag molded in, and the COT stencil. And this end also has the brake wheel, which is nicely molded with a chain underneath, and the top is blank, just this triangle in the middle, and across the side it's pretty much identical to the other side. And here's how it looks like from the top view, which there are holes where the truck is visible. And here's how the bottom looks like, where we have the truck, and there's actually like this notch that it goes into, so the wheel flanges, they just stop at that point. There also are holes for the container pegs to go into. There is a bit of imperfections on the very edges. And then here we have the Rapido Trains logo. And here's the other end. Alright, so now let's go take a look at the containers, which there are 2 of them. And they have refrigerator units, so they are reefers. So first off we have Clarke Transport, which is a Canadian company. Comes in white with a metal roof, and it's a 53-footer. And it's manufactured by CIMC from China. And it's using a Carrier air conditioner from the US. Got a warning on the side, hazmat placard holder. I like that the AC has different colors painted on, very fine detail. They also have these rivet bumps molded in, and it's a XHC, which is a high cube container, so it does have these hazard markings on the sides, and it needs a high cube chassis. And then here we have this bar, where on top you can see there's holes for the container pegs, which there is a cool triangle design. Then we have these silver rails on the top of the bottom, going across the side. It's actually pretty well detailed with these rivets, and here's the bottom peg, and at the top it's very well detailed. They also have a website link here, and the sides also have rivets. Then we have the container doors, logo, door latches, which are molded in, so it's not a separate piece, but it does look shiny. There also are some safety stripes and lots of other details. And the other side's pretty much the same thing. Then here's a look at the bottom, which has a slot for the container chassis. So next up we have the Canadian Pacific reefer container, which comes in this nice bright red livery. And this time its AC is from Heat King, which is Canadian. It does have all this printed detail, which this one has hazard stripes on the top, not just the side. And in the middle we have this big CP logo, and here's a look at the door end. It's also a bit different because they have the container numbers written on the roof as well. And here's the bottom. Alright, so now let's combine these 2 reefers. And that's how these 2 would look like together. Looks pretty nice. It does stay kind of together if you use gravity, but it's not really a tight fit, so it can easily fall off. And then here are the 2 containers in the well car. It looks pretty nice and realistic. And you can see the CP container and the CP wheel car have different shades of red, though it is more closer to the ones on the locomotives. So next up we have the Ferromex well car from Mexico, and it comes in this nice light gray livery. So here's a look at the end. It's pretty much the same design, but it does have some printing, says do not hump, and the grab irons are white. So on the side it says it's the A end, and it's interesting they added a stencil on the truck, FXE for Ferromex, and there's lots of text here, Ferromex website, which everything is pretty legible. They also have the FRA safety stripes which go across the car, although the printing is not really flush with the body. So I looked up the prototype just in case, and yeah, it's not like that. And also they have a different walkway and air tanks, so this car is not entirely accurate. And then here is the other side where it says Ferromex Grupo Mexico, and it's the B end. Now one thing off, if you look at it in the light, there's sort of like these lines in the paint that appear over here, and it says it's made by Gunderson Cancaril, so it is made in Mexico. And then over here we have the brake wheel, and here's how it looks like on the other side, the top and the bottom. Now for the containers, these are smooth side high cubes, and they don't have the air conditioner on the very end. So first off we have JB Hunt, which is pretty well known in the US, and on the side got their classic scroll logo, which is also on the end. Nice details, some colored shapes at the bottom, and apparently it's a composite container, and it says to stack 3 high only. Then on top we have some blue boxes around the pinholes, and this white triangle around it, and there's this random orange dot here, and a mark in the middle. Then across the bottom we have some gray safety stripes, and then here's the other end with the container doors. And it says how's my driving, caution wide turns, so it's really designed for driving trucks. And then here is the other side, and the top and the bottom. Alright, so now for Schneider National, this is an orange container, another company also common in the US. So starting here in the front we got their logo, container number, some patches, and here is the side. And apparently this one you can only stack 2 high, so that's even lower than JB Hunt. And this time they added black around the peg holes, this orange in between, and here on the end they actually put all their information crammed into this white box. And then here's the other side, the top view, which does have orange accents on the ends. And then here is the bottom. Now this is extremely minor, but they do have these little dots from the molding process which shouldn't be there, but it is present on every Rapido container so far. And for these containers, they actually are quite stable, so they don't really come off when you tip it over or even upside down. So here's how it looks like loaded onto the car. It looks pretty nice. And this is a bit interesting, like look at the grip strength of this. It can hold up the entire wheel car from the container, which normally this would actually fall down. Even just from the top, it actually hangs on pretty well. Alright, so I also got the TTX Rapido wheel car, and I had to get this from Train World since Labard Hobby didn't have this in stock, even though I pre-ordered it. But right off the bat, this one actually looks like a real life rail car, and out of the 3 unboxed, this one has the coolest scheme, being yellow TTX. It is interesting, there's no printing on the end, but maybe that's just because it's as delivered. Then on the side, there's lots of printed detail, like it's the A end, all this information, and the text is pretty much all legible. On the side we have the reporting mark DTTX, more detail in the middle, and the old TTX Speedlines logo, which is pretty iconic, and lots more printing on the other side, and this one's also built in Canada. And then on the end we have the brake wheel being the B end, and then here's the other side, the top view, and the bottom. And then for the containers, this one's actually pretty loose, so even though they fit together, it does come off quite easily. Alright, so first we have the CSX container. So in the front we've got the CSX logo, and it has a forklift rating of 24,000 pounds, and the blue is a bit more turquoise in real life, but it does seem accurate. And we have the CSX boxcar logo, and for the website they added an I to CSX just for Intermodal, and I was curious and visited the website, but it turns out they don't use that domain anymore. They do have silver hazmat placard holders, and the doors are packed with a ton of detail. And then here's the other side. The roof is smooth, and the bottom. Again, they still have these little nubs. So for the CN Intermodal, in the front end we have a caution height label, some basic detail, and there's these red stripes at the top corners, the CN Canadian National logo, and they have this cool black and white retro style intermodal train. I think it's an EMD SD75i. Really interesting how you can see the cars in the back whooshing past. And then on the end we have some more detail here. Then here's the other side, and on top they have the container numbers as well. And here's the bottom. so it looks very nice. And here's how it looks like from the side. And again, this container is pretty loose, so you gotta watch out for that. And it comes off very easily, which is like the exact opposite of the other car. And here's how it looks like if there's only one container on board. And this is with 2 containers. Alright, so here I assembled all 3 well cars from Rapido, and I realized that all 3 of them are from separate countries. We got Canadian Pacific from Canada, Ferromex from Mexico, and TTX from the US. So here are them side by side, and apparently Ferromex is the only one with printing in the front, which the other 2 are blank. I think the Ferromex is a newer design because they have these yellow FRA stripes, while TTX uses these white stripes, and on CP they use red and white. Also, Ferromex only has markers for 53 foot and 40 and 20, while Canada and the US also use 48 foot and 45 foot shipping containers. So here's how a full-length Rapido train would look like. Nice! Alright, so here's a collection of every single HO scale well car that I have, and what's cool is all these cars have different designs and from different manufacturers. So first we have the Econo Twin Stack by Intermountain A-Line, the Thorough Rebuilt by Walters, the Backpacker by ScaleTrains, the Maxi 3 by Athearn, the Thorough 53 foot by Atlas, the Maxi 4 by Kato, and our latest one, the Husky Stack by Rapido. And here from the top view, you can see most of them either come in 5 or 3 car sets. So from the top we have 5, another 5, another 5. This is also 5, but Maxi 3 is kind of long. And these ones here are 3 and 3 because they are 53 foot. Now Rapido is also 53 foot, but it's only one unit by itself. And this is because it's like a regular rail car with bogies on either side. And they use regular couplers in between cars, and you can't just stick this by itself in the middle of an intermodal train. But in a typical well car, you'll find the Jacobs bogie that's shared in between units, and that's the case for all the other intermodal rolling stock. And the stuff connecting them in between are just this pin and hole system. It's not like a standard knuckle coupler. And if you compare these two, which are both 3 units, you can see just how much space it saves just by using the Jacobs bogie rather than individual cars, which will be way more efficient over a long train. And in terms of design, it's actually most similar to the Maxi 4, being 53 foot and manufactured by Gunderson. The layout is pretty similar, although Rapido has a metal floor, while on Kato they do have metal sides, but their floors are plastic. So Rapido is way heavier, and on the ends they are a little bit different. On Kato there's 2 extra wall panels inside. ScaleTrains is also using metal, but their floors are plastic as well. Really, Walters mainline is the only one that uses all metal for the floor and the body, while the remaining brands just use plastic. Another premium feature about Rapido trains is that they use etched metal walkways which are see-through, which isn't visible on Kato, Athearn, Walters, and Intermountain A-Line. The few that do have it are Atlas and ScaleTrains, which looks pretty nice. Now, one thing off about Rapido are the stanchion grab irons, which are thicker than the ones on Kato, and also the back face of it is pretty flat in 2D, which isn't exactly realistic looking. In fact, if you look at the prototype, the grab iron should be facing forwards, not towards the sides, which is how it's presented by Kato. It's a lot more accurate looking and looks way better. But even on the middle core, it does have the style where it goes outwards, but you can see it's not flat, and it looks separate from the stanchions. Alright, so I also picked up the Athearn yard tractor, and it's used by Norfolk Southern, and you'll see these guys transporting container trailers at intermodal yard facilities, which I got to see in real life at BNSF Hobart Yard in California. Now the model is fairly lightweight, but it looks pretty cool. And you can see inside there's actually a driver's seat, a steering wheel, and all the controls inside, so it's a lot more detailed than a toy would be. So in the front we have a windshield wiper, the gasket around the window, some rivets with the NS logo, the headlights, grille in the middle, and blinkers on the sides. We also have some zebra stripes at the bottom, and it does roll quite nicely. You can see the wheels turning. And from the side you can see the front wheel and the back wheel, they look different, and that's because the rear wheels are back to back, so there's 4 wheels. There also are mud flaps behind each of the wheels. And for the other side, we got that Norfolk Southern logo with the horse, the side view mirror, grab irons in the back, an ID number, and a safety stripe. Then down here we have this triangle barrier, and behind that are some stairs, which on top you can see some nice walkway treading, and behind we have some taillights. And the other side we have this tank, could be the fuel tank or for the air brakes. I'm not exactly sure, maybe you can let me know in the comments. And here we have this tall exhaust pipe and side view mirror. And on the bottom you can see the whole chassis, the drivetrain. It's actually quite detailed, and the wheels are made of rubber. Also on top we have the hitch plate, and this connects to a trailer which does swivel, and I actually have a Walters trailer which I can hook up to this. Just like that, and now it's loaded up with a container. Alright, so here's how it looks like with a container load, and now you can use this to transport containers in your intermodal yard. Alright, so here is yet another ScaleTrains Tier 4 GEVO, and this one is in the BNSF H3 scheme, and it's a ET44C4 only used by BNSF. But yeah, let's get started here in the front. Alright, so in the front we have all the typical details, the number boards, windshield wipers, these white grab irons, and this black anti-glare paint on the nose, the event recorder camera inside, the headlights, the ditch lights, the door on the left, a ladder on the right, and the modern BNSF swoosh logo. And you can see this pattern of yellow and black, and these stripes wrap around, making their way all the way across the locomotive, which is definitely eye-catching. Then at the bottom we have this yellow MU cable held up by a chain, and there's some text saying the ditch lights use 74-volt bulbs. Then on the side we have the stepwell with white painted edges and see-through etched metal, and you can see all that detail below, and it says ET44C4, which is the locomotive class. Then here's a look at the side of the cab. Very nicely detailed. There's lots of labeling here, which everything is pretty legible. Now the ET44C4 is different from a standard GEVO because its middle axle is actually unpowered, so there's 2 additional brake cylinders, and that's how to tell it apart without having to look at traction motors. Then next up we have the AC inverter aux cab, and at the top we have 2 dynamic air brake vents. You can see there is a slot for the first one, but that's patched up. You can see the grab irons and the panel lines molded in. Then in the middle we have the BNSF swoosh logo and the fuel tank down below with details like the E-bell, the emergency fuel cutoff switch, the fuel fill, and fuel gauges. And it uses ultra low sulfur diesel, which the EPA requires since 2014. Then in the rear we have the radiator section, which has see-through vents, and you can see the cross bracing inside. And there is a brake chain on the truck that is detached, and even more labeling. And then here is the rear, where you have the road numbers and these black air intakes, which are actually see-through, and some spare knuckle couplers, which isn't the best paint job. Alright, then on the engineer side, this side has these little boxes under the cells, says weight management control, and there's like a little red marking on this pipe. Also, there's a serial number molded in, so very detailed. And here we have the sanding line, which is quite thick. Then we have some piping between the air reservoir tanks. Then in the front we have all the usual details, but again there is a special box at the bottom, and the builder's plate. Alright, so that's it for the sides. Now let's go check out the roof section. So on top we have this PTC antenna farm, which I love the barcode design. It's very detailed, the lifting rings, the pipes, and the bumps with black on top. Definitely a pretty cool design. And then after that we have some more panels on top, and in the middle we have the horn, which is a K5 HLR2. And after that we have the exhaust stack off to the side, and then we have the radiator section, which the front area of the vents are actually asymmetrical. And now let's go check out the bottom. We've got the front truck, the fuel tank, and the rear. So now let's compare it to my other ScaleTrains Tier 4 GEVOs, the Union Pacific and CSX. So here's the front view, and you can't see Union Pacific's the odd one out without a window in the nose door, and the event recorder is on the conductor side rather than the engineer side, which is on the other ones. Now Union Pacific and BNSF both have narrow handrails, but on CSX they're more spread apart. Now the BNSF one is the newest updated model, so it does have that chain holding up the MU cable, not present on the older runs, and the couplers seem to change colors over time. So first CSX came in black, then they switched to this light brown color, and the latest ones are darker and more saturated, very shiny. And they all have different PTC antenna styles. The CSX is a bit of an older design, while Union Pacific and BNSF are standard today. And for the dynamic brakes, you can see the BNSF only has 2 vents, unlike 3 vents on the others. And since it's a C4, I can tell it apart with these cylinders on the sides, which aren't in regular GEVOs. Now all Tier 4 GEVOs have this humpback radiator section, but there is a little variation in the exhaust stacks. CSX has the original square bracket, so it's flat on top, while it's angled on BNSF and Union Pacific, so it slopes down on the sides. But it does seem like the BNSF exhaust stack sticks out a bit more than Union Pacific. There also is a digital fuel gauge on Union Pacific and CSX, but apparently BNSF does not have that. And then here's a look at the rear, which again BNSF has that chain, but one thing better on the older runs, they colored the spare knuckle couplers pretty decently, but the BNSF one is a bit sloppy, it's not all the way to the edge, and this one has a hole in it. So that's it for the comparisons. Now let's go run some trains. Alright, so for my final thoughts, the Rapido Husky Stack well cars. They're excellent for intermodal trains, being very detailed, nice legible printing, and I like that the entire body's made of metal, so it has a nice weight to it, and it glides when it rolls. It is one of the few brands that has see-through etched metal walkways, and it's good if you just want one solo car by itself rather than buying an entire set. It also comes with 2 randomized containers, although it's really only 2 out of 3 per type of well car, so it's a bit predetermined, and each container looks pretty great. They're well detailed, has the hazmat placards, and I like how they painted the parts of the AC on the reefers. The door latches are molded in, but they look fine, and I would recommend getting the pack with the containers than the 2 car set, so you can have a nice container variety. And now for the cons. The handrails don't seem to be prototypically accurate. In real life they should be sticking out forwards, not to the sides, and they made the back face of it 2-dimensional, so it looks pretty flat and thick. Also, the Ferromex well car doesn't match the prototype. The walkway should be in the middle with the air tank on the left. I also got the Athearn yard tractor, which is actually more detailed than I was expecting, with grab irons, cabin tier, the whole underside chassis, and you can use this to pull trailers around, which is actually pretty fun to mess around with. And as I was editing the video, I also found out you can also raise the hitch plate, which gets pretty tall, so that's another cool feature you can use. So definitely essential for an intermodal layout. And lastly, for the ScaleTrains BNSF ET44C4 GEVO, as always, ScaleTrains locomotives are very realistic. I have reviewed the Union Pacific and the CSX ET44s before, but this one is a cool variation since it's a C4, so it has these extra cylinders on the truck and the boxes on the engineer's side, also 2 vents instead of 3, and the BNSF H3 color scheme does look pretty great and vibrant. I also want to include this in the video because I remember when I went rail fanning in Fullerton, practically every single leading locomotive was a BNSF GEVO, although those were the ES44s. But yeah, I hope you guys enjoyed the video. Give your thoughts in the comment section down below, subscribe to be notified of future videos, and I'll see you guys in the next one. Bye.